Have you ever noticed how you don't just quit once? You quit the same way every single time. You get excited, you plan out everything, you tell yourself this time is going to be different. Maybe you even tell your friends. You buy a notebook, you download an app, you make your schedule, and around a week later, life happens. You get busy. Maybe you miss a day. Motivation disappears, and before you know it, you're right back where you started. Not because you stopped caring, but because there's something deeper going on. Something that most people don't even take the time to look at. So by the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly what that is and how you can break through it. Now, before we get into it, I want to tell you about something I built specifically for this, specifically for you. Because understanding why you struggle with consistency is one thing, but actually rebuilding it is another. So I created a free workbook called The Next Step, which walks you through choosing the right promises for yourself, building non-negotiables that actually work, and preparing for the resistance that shows up along the way. You don't need it to get value from this video, but if you want to apply what you learn to your life, it's linked down below. Hi, I'm Kimmy. Welcome to Thryve Space. My whole goal here is to help you become more aligned to the person you actually want to be. Not through forcing productivity, but through genuinely understanding yourself, building aligned discipline, and creating habits that actually support your future self. So let's get into it. So here's a story you might have been told about consistency. Disciplined people just want it more. That's it. That's the whole explanation we've been given our entire lives. If you can't stick to something, you must not want it badly enough. So the fix is always the same. Try harder, want it more, find more motivation. And I think that explanation isn't just wrong, it's also actively harmful. Because it puts the blame on a place that you can't do anything about. You can't just manufacture wanting it more. You either feel motivated or you don't. And when the motivation runs out, because it always does at some point, you're left with no explanation except, I guess I just didn't want it badly enough. And that becomes one more piece of evidence against yourself. So here's what's actually happening. Every time you set a goal, your brain isn't just tracking what you want, it's also tracking whether you're someone who will follow through on that. Not consciously, you're obviously not sitting there actively thinking about it, but underneath the surface, every connection your neurons are making, every promise you're making to yourself becomes a new piece of data. And your brain is building a case file, an ongoing argument for or against the idea that you can trust yourself. However, I want to be really clear about something. None of this means that you're broken. None of it means that you're stuck this way. Because here's what that case file your brain has been building doesn't account for. It's not permanent. It's not who you are. It's just the most recent evidence it's been given. And evidence can be changed. Your brain doesn't care about how many times you've quit before or how long this pattern has been going on for. All it's doing is updating based on what happens next. Based on what you do next. Which means that every version of you, no matter how many times you've given up in the past, is one decision away from beginning a completely new case file. And that's not a metaphor. That's actually how identity is formed. Not through one big transformation, but through many small, repeated actions just pointed in a new direction. So, if you're watching this and thinking about all the times you've quit in the past, all the notebooks you've thrown away, all the routines you've abandoned, and all the times you've said, this time will be different, but it wasn't, I need you to hear this. That is not evidence that you cannot be consistent. That's just evidence of what you've practiced in the past. But going forward from today, we are going to be practicing new habits, thinking new thoughts, and becoming the new identity that will shift into our highest self. So here's the framework we're going to use to break down what this actually looks like. This is called the evidence loop. And once you notice it, you're going to be seeing it a lot in your life. The evidence loop is a cycle, and it starts from making a promise. When you tell yourself you're going to do something, like go to the gym, write a chapter of a book, show up for an important meeting, and from each promise you make, we have the action, telling us either you do it or you don't. Whatever you end up doing, this gets logged as a file in your brain and becomes the evidence. Not as a one-time event, but as proof. And this proof makes up your identity. Having enough proof repeated enough times stops being something I did and starts being someone I am. An identity walks straight to your next promise. Before you've even decided what to do next, a part of you has already decided whether you're the person who follows through or not. And that's the loop. It's not motivation or discipline. It's repeated evidence that compounds into creating your beliefs and your identity. And here's why it matters so much. Most people think of the bigger goal, like going to the gym, writing a book, starting their own business. But your brain doesn't care about that big goal. It cares about the pattern underneath the goal and whether you're someone who does what they say. So instead of thinking about that long-term goal, ask yourself, what is one small promise I can keep every day which will bring me closer to the goal? Let me give you an example. Let's say you make a New Year's resolution to go to the gym more. You go for the first 2 weeks, everything's great, but then life gets busy. You miss a day, and then you stop. Your brain isn't registering that as, oh, the gym didn't work out this month. It files it away as I say things and I don't follow through. And that belief doesn't just relate to the gym. It also shows up when you make the goal of wanting to read more, or wanting to journal every day, or even wanting to set a boundary in a relationship. And that's the part that people miss. This isn't 12 separate struggles at the gym or work or in your relationships. It's one pattern showing up in all areas of your life. Which also means the reverse is true. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, one that you actually follow through on, you're feeding evidence into every other area of your life that you can trust yourself, and your words do matter. That's why I don't want to just tell you to be more disciplined, because that's not going to help. That's going to leave you more uncertain. It's like telling someone to just believe in themselves without addressing the deeper root cause of their self-doubt, fear, and negative self-talk. You don't rebuild self-trust by trying harder. You rebuild it the same way you lost it. One piece of evidence at a time, one promise kept at a time. So how do you actually do that? If you watched my previous video, you already know that motivation isn't designed to carry you all the way. It's designed to fade. That's not a flaw, that's just how it works. It's more of a spark, it's not the fuel. So here's what's going on underneath. In the beginning, everything is new. Your brain releases dopamine just from having the idea of change. New gym clothes, new planner, new version of yourself. That dopamine and excitement isn't really about the goal. It's about the novelty. But unfortunately, like motivation, the novelty does fade as well. And that's okay. So a few days or weeks in, that newness wears off. The workouts start feeling like work again. The business might get slow, and resistance shows up. Not because something's wrong, but because you've moved past the easy part. Here's where people make the mistake. They interpret that as a sign. They say, maybe I'm just not built for this. Maybe I chose the wrong goal. I feel like it shouldn't be this hard. But resistance was never a sign that you chose the wrong goal. It's a sign that you've entered the only part of the process where your new identity can actually get built. If it never got hard, there'd be nothing to prove. Anyone can show up when it's exciting. But the evidence loop doesn't care about the version of you that shows up when it's easy. It's built entirely from what you do the moment the excitement fades. So the real question is, what do you do the first time that resistance shows up and you don't feel like doing it? Because that single moment, the moment where the excitement is gone, nobody's watching, and you genuinely don't feel like doing it, that's the moment that matters the most. Now, how do you actually keep promises once motivation's gone? Not in theory, but for real. What do you do differently starting today so that the evidence loop can actually start working for you? There are 4 steps, and I just want to warn you quickly, they are not exciting. If you're expecting some big transformation, this isn't that. Because what broke your self-trust in the first place was repeated broken promises. So the fix has to start small too. Step 1, stop making promises you'll probably break. This sounds so obvious, but most people don't actually do it. Most of us set our goals based on how motivated we feel in the moment, not what we can realistically sustain on an ordinary Tuesday. When you set a promise to yourself that's not realistic, you're not ambitious. You're manufacturing evidence against yourself before you've even started. So before you commit to anything, ask yourself one honest question. Can the most tired, unmotivated version of myself still get this done? And if the answer is no, the goal isn't wrong. It's just a bit big for now. And that's completely fine. Step 2, shrink the promise. Now, this is the one that most people resist because it feels like giving up on ambition. But it's not, because small progress is so much better than no progress at all. If a promise to work out for an hour keeps getting broken, the promise isn't the problem, the size is. So shrink it to the point that breaking it feels almost impossible. Don't work out for an hour. Just put on your shoes. Don't write a whole chapter of a book. Just open the document. The goal isn't to make the promise small forever. It's to let your brain land a small enough win that it can't say no to it. Because the win is what rebuilds the evidence. And once your brain has enough evidence that you can follow through, the promise can grow on its own. But it has to start small enough to actually happen. Number 3. Keep today's promise, not tomorrow's. Your brain doesn't actually build trust from, I'll get back on track next week. It files evidence from what you actually did, not what you planned, not what you intended, from what actually happened. So stop planning out the whole month. Stop thinking about who you'll be in the next 6 months if you stay consistent. All of that lives in the future. And your brain cannot file evidence from the future. It can only file evidence based on today. So the only promise that matters is the one that you keep today. Step 4, repeat, even when it's boring, especially when it's boring. Because here's the truth that nobody's gonna put on a motivational poster. Identity isn't built in the exciting moments. It's built in the moments when nobody's watching. The 10th day, not the first. The ordinary Tuesday where you almost didn't, but did anyway. I want to be honest with you about something. The process might not feel like progress. Shrinking your goals is going to feel at first like you're doing less than you should be. Keeping a tiny promise every day for 2 weeks is going to feel painfully slow compared to the version of you that wants to change everything overnight. But that's your old pattern trying to talk you back into making a promise you'll probably break. The goal was never to impress yourself in week 1. It wasn't even about the goal itself. It's about becoming someone you can trust again. And once you accept that, everything you thought you were trying to build finally clicks into place. Imagine for a second that you had a friend, and every time they said they were going to be there for you, they were. Whether they were far or close, busy or not, they showed up. You wouldn't have to think twice about trusting them. They wouldn't have to convince you or promise extra hard or prove themselves with some big gesture. The trust would just exist because it was built the boring way, one kept promise at a time. Now imagine a different friend. They mean well. They always mean well, but they cancel. And they usually have a reason or an excuse, a good one most of the time. And even though you still like them, even though you still love them, Some part of you stops believing them when they say, "I'll be there." Not because you stopped caring about the friendship, but because the evidence stopped supporting the promise. And here's the uncomfortable part. For a lot of us, we've quietly become that second friend to ourselves. Not because we're lazy, not because we've stopped caring about our own goals, but because somewhere along the way, we started treating promises to ourselves as optional. We'll drive across town at 6 a.m. to pick up a friend from the airport, but we'll cancel our own workout without a second thought. And your brain has quietly been keeping score of that the entire time. But here's what I want you to hear. That second friend who kept canceling isn't a bad person. They're just someone whose actions and intentions got disconnected at some point. And the moment they start closing that gap, even slightly in the small ways, the trust starts rebuilding. Not instantly, not dramatically, but it starts. And that's the whole point of this video. You're not a person with a discipline problem. You're not lazy. You're definitely not broken. Your brain has just been keeping an ongoing, honest record of every promise you've been making to yourself. But the good news is that the record is not final. It's updating every single day, which means it can start updating in your favor starting today. One kept promise won't undo years of evidence, but it's a new entry in a very different case file, and every one after it makes the next one a little easier to believe. So if you're telling yourself you're lazy or undisciplined, or that you just can't stick to anything, I really hope this video gave you a different perspective, because you don't have a consistency problem. What you have is a track record, one that your brain has been quietly building for years, promise by promise, without you ever realizing what was happening. You can't do anything by saying, "I lack discipline." It just sits there as a judgment on who you think you are. But instead, by saying, "My brain is running on outdated evidence." Now that's something we can work with. It's not a final judgment or a decision. It's a case file in need of new information. So every promise you keep becomes a new entry. No matter how small, no matter how unimpressive it might feel in the moment, it's not proof that you've changed everything overnight, but it's proof that today you were someone who followed through. Do that enough times and it stops becoming something you're trying to prove and starts becoming part of your identity. And that's the whole shift. Evidence becomes belief, belief becomes identity, and identity is what consistency was made of the entire time. Your identity has potential of becoming consistent. And if you've realized while watching this that you're ready to start rebuilding that trust, but you're not so sure where to start, that's exactly why I created the next step, which is a free guided workbook linked below. It will help you choose the right promises to start with, build non-negotiables that actually fit your life, and prepare for the resistance you know is coming. And always remember, becoming your ideal self isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming a little more aligned than you were yesterday. One kept promise at a time. I'll see you next week.